Back in 2013, when David Haye pulled out of the Tyson Fury fight with a cut eye, Fury's fans and Tyson Fury himself were accusing David Haye of inflicting that cut on himself in order to get out of the fight. So it's ironic that the Fury fans right now are saying it's ridiculous to suggest that Fury would have cut his own eye to get out of the Usyk fight. Now, at the time of that David Haye pullout, I thought it was preposterous to suggest that that was a self-inflicted injury, because you're going to leave scar tissue there that could very well open in your next fight. You would have to be unbelievably desperate to do such a thing. And I could not see why Haye would be that desperate. But given the way his career panned out subsequent to that, I have contemplated the possibility that I was actually naive in that situation, because Haye was out of the ring for 3 years after that. 3 years. So if you don't plan on fighting for several years after that pullout, then perhaps you would cut your own eye. And we now know his body was riddled with injuries. Tyson Fury, who again accused David Haye of cutting his own eye to get out of the fight, said that Haye had a terrible camp. That's what he'd heard. And if his body was riddled with injuries and he sensed he was actually going to get destroyed by Tyson Fury if the fight went ahead, who knows? Now, I pointed out in the previous video I did about this subject that Moses Itauma was back in the UK definitely by Wednesday, but perhaps even earlier than that. Because I took this screenshot yesterday, and as you can see at the top, it says on Itauma's status that it was from 21 hours ago, which takes us back to Wednesday, and he was in the gym sparring. Bear in mind, Itauma was set to be on the Usyk Fury undercard, and he was one of Fury's main sparring partners. So I did find it odd that 2 days ago, at least, he's back in Britain. If there wasn't enough orthodox sparring for him, Tyson Fury has got more than a big enough budget, so has Frank Warren, to fly some out to Saudi Arabia. Now, the Fury team have put out some footage, which they claim is the moment where Fury suffers this cut. It's a brief sparring clip where Fury's sparring partner hits him with a big left hand. And then when they break, somebody says he's cut. I'm not sure whether it's Fury that says it or somebody else, but you can hear a voice say he's cut. And then they say, who's cut? You don't actually see a cut. You just hear people talking. Now, just like I said in my previous video, boxing is a contact sport. Injuries happen, cuts happen. And if it wasn't Tyson Fury we're talking about here, then I wouldn't really feel any need to be cynical. But I've had subscribers of mine who have been absolutely steadfast in their view that Fury was going to pull out of this fight. I mean, it got so close that I was thinking, nah, no way, he's not going to pull out now. But they were consistently saying in the comments, he's going to pull out, he's going to pull out, I'm telling you. And almost like clockwork, it happens. You know, those of you who have never boxed, never sparred, there are lots of different types of head guard or headgear, as they call them in America. Some are more protective than others of your eyes. With experienced professionals, the closer you get to fight night, the more careful you are. At that point, you're wearing headgear that is extremely protective. It's virtually impossible to get caught wearing it. If Fury was wearing that kind of headgear, then that is one of the most incredible freak accidents I've ever seen. But what are the odds of that? And if he wasn't wearing that kind of protective headgear, then why not? I saw a couple comments from people saying the sparring footage looks staged. Well, I didn't think it looked staged. But I do not trust Tyson Fury or his team, so I can't dismiss the possibility that it was. You know, theoretically, that cut could have happened before the sparring session, but Fury just pretended that it happened during. You know, wait till he gets hit on it so it starts bleeding a bit. Then he can say, oh, yep, stop the spar, I'm cut, lads, I'm cut. You know, I actually want to see Tyson Fury on film, on video, on his social media or whatever, showing us the cut. There's a photo, we know. There's also a thing called Photoshop. Bear in mind, he's already been cut on that eye. There was actually 2 cuts in the Otto Wallin fight. A big one on top and a smaller one below. Is it possible that he just photoshopped a picture of the cuts he received in the Wallin fight and airbrushed out the bigger cut and left the smaller one? I'm just asking that as a question. I mean, I know it's possible in Photoshop to do stuff like that. I'm asking you guys whether you think Fury actually did it here. Tyson Fury is the most devious, deceitful, cunning heavyweight I think I've ever seen, in and out of the ring. I mean, you would not trust this guy to tell you the time in a room full of clocks. So if there's anyone in boxing who I wouldn't put it past to pull a stunt, it would be him. I said in a previous video, I suspect that Johnny Nelson's sources were accurate and Fury was getting worked over in the gym. I mean, that brief sparring clip where Tyson Fury gets hit with that big left hand, he wasn't looking too clever in there, was he? I know it was only a couple of seconds, but he was very stationary on the inside, wide open to a big left hand. Where was the Mayweather-esque defense? I think Johnny Nelson's sources were telling him the truth, and Nelson's sources were also saying that Usyk was absolutely flying in camp. And I can believe that too. There's no doubt that Fury was under tremendous pressure. Absolutely tremendous. How much money do you think that promo alone cost? A couple million? I mean, I've never seen anything like it. The Saudis had just done TV deals with all 3 major networks in the UK. And Fury, of course, was training in Saudi Arabia. In order to get out of a fight in those type of circumstances, you probably would have to do something quite extreme. You know, it's interesting that Frank Warren has been talking about George Foreman getting cut before the Rumble in the Jungle. Well, back then, headgear was not what it is today. Nevertheless, George Foreman, in case you didn't know, absolutely hated Zaire. He hated Africa. He could not wait to get out of there. And so when he received that cut, George Foreman tried to leave the country immediately, and he had no intention of coming back to Zaire, coming back to Africa. He was going to hightail it off to the United States and the fight would be cancelled. But the president of Zaire at the time didn't allow George Foreman to leave. He controlled all the airports and what have you, and he blocked George Foreman from leaving. Make of that what you will. We can't know that Foreman deliberately cut himself or anything like that, but we definitely do know that he couldn't wait to get out of Zaire. Even before the cut happened, he could not wait. That cut was a godsend for him because he thought that was his ticket out. This could be Tyson Fury's ticket out. Alexander Usyk has been holding off a mandatory against Filip Hrgović trying to make this fight with Tyson Fury for something like a year now, maybe longer than that. Perhaps the IBF are going to step in and say, no more waiting, Usyk has to fight Hrgović next. I think Fury would be absolutely over the moon if Usyk had to fight Filip Hrgović next rather than him. Gareth A. Davis, who's basically just Tyson Fury's PR man at this point, said that the Usyk fight could be rescheduled for summer. Summer? Why on earth would it take that long? The cut only needed, what was it, 12 stitches, 7 stitches, something like that. The cuts he received in the Otto Wallin fight needed something like 47 or 50 stitches. And he was only out the ring for something like 4 or 5 months after that. His next fight was the rematch with Deontay Wilder. So why would a cut that only requires, let's say, 12 stitches need as much time to heal from as an injury that took 47 stitches, that was far worse? Summer? No. You know, I thought Tyson Fury could win this fight. I thought he'd have to come from behind on points, but I thought he could win it. But now I'm thinking, you know what? The way things have transpired, and believing that Tyson Fury was getting worked over in the gym in sparring, if the fight had gone ahead, I think Fury might have actually got destroyed, as in stopped. The guy has never been keen on this fight at all. If this wound is not self-inflicted, if he hasn't gone out there with the intention of trying to get cut in sparring or photoshopped an old picture, if it's genuine, and perhaps it is, then I have to imagine that Fury is breathing a massive sigh of relief. I don't think he ever wanted this fight, certainly not at this stage. At the very least, I think he wanted to kick the can much further down the road than this. I saw Ade on TalkSport suggest that Fury might actually retire rather than reschedule this fight. If Fury does retire, then again, that might be an indication that this was a self-inflicted injury. Because again, look back to when David Haye pulled out of the Fury fight. He was out of the ring for 3 years after that. 3 years. A cut doesn't keep you out the ring for 3 years. There must be much more wrong with you to stay out the ring for that long. In which case, maybe you did inflict that cut on yourself because you knew that you were absolutely shot to pieces in training camp. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.